the idea of taking a critical look at the program and with the possibility of extending should not be off the table. In a certain sense, I also agree with the president that the program needs to be looked at again. And I agree with the president when he mentioned the fiscal consolidation measures. Essentially here we are talking about taxes. If you look at the original program, the fiscal consolidation measures were predicated heavily on revenue enhancements, contributing at least more than almost 60% of the fiscal adjustment compared to expenditure cuts. Then, because we didn't have the time, I agree with the president that all that we had to do was just to introduce more tax handles and also deepening some of the existing tax handles. And of course, the results have not been that good in terms of its impact on taxpayers. But if you look at the revenue numbers and you look at the first structural reform under the IMF supported program, which occasioned the development of the medium-term revenue strategy, you can see that we are ahead of ourselves in terms of the target we set under the medium-term revenue strategy. We had agreed with the IMF as well that we're going to do revenue to GDP ratio of about 18.7% by 2027. If you look at the numbers that are coming in, it looks like probably by the end of 2025, we could be reaching that. So it means that 2 years ahead of that target, we are meeting that. In fact, if you look at 2024, it is possible that by the time we are done, we could be reaching revenue to GDP ratio of about 17.1% or so. Then it means that we just need about 1% or so of GDP to meet that target. Now, if you look at the interesting thing which the president also highlighted, if you look at a country like Ghana, to the extent that our economy is not largely taxable, because we are not growing a taxable economy in order to generate sufficient tax revenue from that economy. And we should bear in mind that it is not every aspect of GDP and its redistribution that is taxable. So the conventional idea of benchmarking your tax revenue by the size of your economy may not be totally relevant for the nature of our economies and all of that, compared to advanced economies, right, where they have spent time over several decades to grow a taxable economy. We are not growing a taxable economy. In fact, if you look at the data, just around 41% of the GDP contributes about 86% of the tax revenue, right? So a large chunk of our economy is not taxable. Okay, the bigger percentage of our economy is contributing just about 14% of tax revenue. So that means that any strategy to collect more tax revenue, if we are not careful, we'll be burdening the faithful few, and by the time you realize you have actually killed the chicken that hatches that gives the egg, right? And all of that. So you may, and actually, if you look at it carefully, you will see that what we have done under this IMF supported program largely is to some extent compromise our medium to long-term survivability for short-term praise, because the program is short-term in nature. So the IMF comes in, introduce all kinds of measures, right? Fiscal consolidation, the burden of adjustment disproportionately distributed, right? And then this time around, we're also doing debt treatment. And if you look at the relief from the debt restructuring, more than 90% of the fiscal release from the domestic debt restructuring, the external debt restructuring would all be utilized while the IMF program is in place. And this is designed to give the program maximum space to be able to deliver on its objectives. Then the IMF will take the credit. The situation was that bad. We moved in and we got the result. But the question is the post-IMF program, how sustainable will this program be? There's a possibility of rollback of some of those measures. Those are the things that we want to look at.